All right. All right. Here we go. Welcome in, everybody. We'll get started in just a minute here. I'm going to let people kind of gradually join the live stream. Let's see here. Most people don't log in and join until the live stream's going for a few seconds because they'll see like a cover on YouTube or the channel that says that it's scheduled but hasn't started. And so they'll kind of wait and then they see that it's started. And then people usually jump in at that point. So we'll probably see the numbers get going here in a minute. And then I'll do my usual welcome in and countdown, and then we'll get started. For those of you who are just joining and you're not sure what's going on, I am coming on today to, with just about 48 hours left in the Kickstarter, to promote the Kickstarter and to give a special talk on the eventual trine between Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius, which will start happening in 2025. I think as we're looking at the long term, at a moment like we do, like right now at the end of the year, we're always looking at what's coming in the year ahead, and that's a big thing that astrologers do. But I think it can be helpful to think beyond just the next year, because the arc that's starting to develop with Pluto entering Aquarius is being followed very closely in the sky by Uranus, who's going to enter Gemini and trine Pluto. So today we're going to look at that, talk about what it might mean, and then do horoscopes for all 12 signs, looking at the two houses that will connect through Uranus and Pluto's trine. So that'll be our goal for today once everyone gets here. And in the meantime, let's see where you guys are coming from as we get started. Okay, here we go. Where are you guys coming from? Munich, nice. Is it Jonah? Good morning from Chico, from Peru. I see Tom from Chile is here. I love seeing some familiar faces. Good morning from Montana. Good morning. That's a great picture, by the way. Anytime you've got a dolphin kissing you, it's a lucky day. Gonna make the numbers. Yes, I hope so. We're down to only needed 351 more backers. I haven't even checked. It might have gone up. So thanks, Monique, for that shout out. Spain, Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, Minnetrista, Minnesota. Hey, fellow Minnesotan, welcome in. Gina from Venus, nice. Danielle from Indiana. Jeanette from Sun City, Arizona. Katie McComb from Sonoma. And let's see, Uruguay. I like this New Mexico in the underworld of a life of Pluto. I love that. Southwestern Indiana, Maine, Springfield, Vienna. Awesome. Hello, year 2 student and backer from the UK. Hey, thanks for being a backer. Really appreciate you and hope that you enjoy the year 2 program. Are you in it, or are you starting it in June? I recognize faces from class that come on the camera and mic more than names, because there's so many students in all the different programs. It's easy to forget names, but once I see someone's face, then if they're like someone who comes on and asks questions, and we have a lot of people in the classes that come on, I usually recognize people right away once I see their face. Palm Beach, Florida, Finger Lakes region in NY. Monique, the spoiled Dodgers fan from Los Angeles. Monique is Monique is a Nightlight alumni, and I hosted a Nightlight fantasy football league last year, and then we did it again this year, and Monique was in our fantasy league, and so we like to talk shit to each other about football. And let's see, Jersey and Ulster County, New York, Los Angeles, Nailstone, England. So that's another one of those names, and I'm like, of course there's a Nailstone, England, right? Doesn't that sound like someplace in England? Toronto, and let's see, Cincinnati, Scottsdale, Brisbane. May you please read my chart? We're not doing charts today, but we'll see if we have time. Maybe if there's time, I don't know. Annapolis. Anna Marie, who was here yesterday helping us promote the program, writing her dissertation on gaslighting while Pluto's squaring her moon in Taurus in the 7th house. Remember? Yeah. I loved that one. That was really cool reading. Sharon from Minneapolis, who attends our herbal gatherings and is like a neighbor, just come and got some herbs from our herb garden. So there's Monique. Park Rapids, Minnesota. I love that there's some Minnesotans in the house. Yes. Here we are with no snow. We're all forlorn. We don't know what to do with ourselves. Right? Canadian border in New York, Dublin, Ireland, Colorado. And my goodness, we are over 100 people here to get started. So I'm going to use the countdown. We're going to get going, and I'll tell you what we're going to do today. All right. Welcome in, everybody. Today, I am going live as a way of promoting the Kickstarter campaign, which is in its final hours. In fact, as I speak, we have just 47 hours left to go and trying to reach our goal, which is 1,777 backers by tomorrow night. It technically runs until Monday morning, I think about 9 a.m. Central or Eastern time, but we're going to try and make that last push by tomorrow night. And so as of the time that I am recording this, we have 1,426 backers. We still need 351. And the easiest way to donate is going to be after this video is done. You can find the link to donate to the Kickstarter pinned to the top of the comments section or in the description of the video. But for those of you who are live, the easiest way until that is posted afterward is probably to use the link nightlightastrology.com, which is our website, and use the link on our website. I'll take you over there right now so you can see it and tell you a little bit about the different rewards that you can. We've had a lot of questions coming in email about the Kickstarter and the rewards and like one program versus another. What do they offer? So I'm going to go over this real quickly. I promise I'll be brief. And then today we're going to be looking at Uranus's upcoming trine to Pluto, which is really an event on the horizon that starts in 2024 with Pluto's entrance into Aquarius and Uranus starting to finish up in the last decan of Taurus with its work in that sign. And even though 2024 doesn't have the two of them connecting, they're pretty close because when Pluto retrogrades into the last degrees of Capricorn, Uranus is hanging around in the last degrees of Taurus. And then in 2025, the two get together in a very electric trine. What does it mean that the two planets will be trine to one another? We're going to be taking a look at that on an archetypal level, and then I'll be doing horoscopes for all 12 signs. I just think it's a fun way to look forward at the deep future as opposed to just limiting how we think of the future to calendar years. And so we'll do that today for fun and obviously as a way of rallying some last minute support for the Kickstarter campaign. So on that note, let's see here. So if you go over to the website, nightlightastrology.com, you can click on the 2024 Kickstarter. That's going to be the easiest way to head over to the Kickstarter and make your donation. Right now, like I said, let me just see here. What did I say? We're at 351 backers about left that we need. That's a lot of backers in 2 days. But yesterday we were like 200 some backers in a day. So I think we can do it. I really do. But we need to rally a bunch of last minute support. And when you support, there's a variety of rewards that you can pick up. And I want to go over those with you now. So I am going to show you. Let me just adjust what I'm looking at here. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to take you over to the Kickstarter right now and show you the different rewards and explain each of them, and then I will launch into today's talk. So when you pledge at $25, you get a digital calendar, And that digital calendar includes all of the transits for the year ahead, especially those that I'm going to be covering on my YouTube channel. So you'll have a sense of what transits I am most likely to be covering. I don't cover every last transit on the calendar, but for the most part, this is a calendar of the transits that I have highlighted for the year ahead as I've done my prep work for writing content for 2024. So that's kind of a fun thing. Just allows you to follow along with the astrology, gives you the dates and the dates and transits for the year. If you scroll down, the Astrology of 2024 video is an exclusive video I'm not releasing anywhere else, which is tracking all of the major astrology of 2024, which of course I'll be doing little by little on my channel. So there's nothing in this video that you wouldn't see as the year goes on. But if you kind of want a preview of everything coming in the year, Alex and I break down the major transits of 2024 in this little gift video. Then we have the year ahead horoscope video. This is where Alex and I took about 45 minutes per sign. And when you pledge at that $75 level, you can get a significant reading for 2024 on all the major transits for your sun or rising sign. You get to pick which one you want. The Oracle Speaks is my book before it comes out in print form, which estimate will be within 2 years. You could pick up my book and be reading it as the chapters come out, or listening to the audiobook form as the audiobook chapters are released. And then that, yes, eventually it'll be available in print form, but we're doing this kind of advanced release as just a special way of supporting the channel, generating interest in what we're doing. And for people who want kind of advanced reading of the book before it comes out, in a like a paperback form, you can pick up The Oracle Speaks, which is my new book. It's all about astrology. It's everything that I know about astrology, that I have learned about divination in particular and oracles, deliberately it's sort of encrypted into stories. And so I think you will really appreciate it. It's in a sense, I like to think that the stories of this book are everybody's stories, that everyone should read these stories and go, yes, this is how I came to also very similar ways in which most people come to develop a relationship with oracles like tarot, I Ching, astrology, and how you start to develop a relationship, a communication with an oracle. Well, this is what the book is all about. It's kind of an oracular memoir, and it's really fun though. It's like a collection of stories, and I think you guys will really like it. So anyway, that's my new book. That's at the $100 level. We've got the third chapter. I've finished, but I have to get through the Kickstarter so I can take like a good week to edit, revise, and record and release the third chapter. It's all done though, but the first 2 chapters are out. Mysteries of the Moon Cycle is one of the masterclass series talks from 2023. We explore the phases of the moon and the delineation of all the sun and moon placements through the whole signs. And that is a course that you can pick up. And then we have the cycles of Venus, and that's about 10 hours worth of content. And then cycles of Venus and Mercury, another 8 to 10 hours worth of content on the synodic cycles of Venus and Mercury and how to interpret their positions in a natal chart. We have Zen and the Art of Zodiacal Releasing, which is meant for people who maybe if you've never heard of a zodiacal releasing, you can learn about it and learn how to use it. It's an ancient timing technique that's breathtaking. It's super beautiful. But this is also for people who know something about zodiacal releasing, but have found it difficult to implement. They don't know exactly how to use it. Like, I know how it works and it's pretty impressive, but how do you use it really for other people, especially? And then finally, Unlocking Temperament and Personality. We're looking at the ancient calculation of psychology and character. And that talk is also available. So you can get any of those individual modules from the 2023 Masterclass series, or if you scroll down, you can get the archived Masterclass bundle, which puts them all together, all 4 of those together in a bundle. That's about 40 hours worth of content. You've got Ask 3 Horary questions. So you can ask 3 horary questions anytime during 2024. And it's funny, I've got like a bunch of people who are in the past couple of weeks have been sending their final question of the year. They're like, oh, I've got one question left. And what's the last question I'm going to ask before the year is up? If you scroll down a little bit more, Roots and Spheres is our moon circle. We start in January with the new moon in Capricorn. You can join a nice community of people who get together with the intention to work with the astrological energies of the month, using plant medicine, using spiritual rituals, and having community time to speak, reflect, feedback, and ask deeper questions about personally working with and processing the astrological energies of the year. That is a really fun, experiential community. It's a place to have to like make friends and connect with other people over the astrology of each moon cycle. So check that one out. That starts in January, coming up really quick, but it's on sale through the Kickstarter. And then our 2024 Masterclass series. This winter, we're looking at the fixed stars. In the spring, we're looking at the spiritual alchemy of the outer planets. In the summer, we're looking at the nodes of the moon in ancient astrology. And in the fall, we're looking at the archetypes of the astrologer, the different kinds of roles that astrologers have played: priest or priestess, shaman or healer, counselor or therapist. There's so many different sort of roles that astrologers have been identified with archetypally over thousands of years. So that one is really about figuring out the different archetypes of the astrologer and which one maybe you identify with and how to let that impact your relationship with astrology or your practice of astrology. Those are the master classes, and they're on sale. If you buy the whole series, you save quite a bit of money on the masterclass series for 2024, which gets started here in January as well. Then we have our class bundles. The year one, all of our programs are called Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. The year one Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic course is an immersion into natal astrology from the Hellenistic perspective. It is a really rich program with a ton of support and community, bonus material, tutoring sessions, a tutored discussion forum where you can ask questions. Year two is if you bundle two classes together, right? You could take year one and year two. But either way, one class pass, two class pass, you can take any of the programs with them. They don't expire. They're transferable if you want to gift one to someone. The year two program is all about timing techniques and prediction in ancient astrology. Year three is advanced mentoring in Hellenistic astrology, which features a whole curriculum on counseling in astrology. How do we use ancient astrology in a counseling therapeutic context as astrologers, not as trained therapists, but as astrologers? What are the counseling tools or skills we should be aware of and we should use as astrologers? And in that program, we also work with a lot of live clients, and we also have a lot of practice work where students are bringing in charts from your own practice, and we're looking at those together. So that's the year three program. Then we have a horary course as well. Horary is a specific branch of ancient astrology, very highly predictive in nature, and you can pick that one up with the class pass as well. And the class passes also include, if you wanted to use a class pass toward the master class series, or if you wanted to use a class pass toward the Roots and Spheres program. Once you get up to the 4-class pass, you're saving a significant amount of money, to where our normal programs, the full cost is $1,800. Our training program, any of them, for the full cost. The early bird rate, if you pay up front for the entire program when the early bird sale goes on before each program, is $1,299. The one class pass goes down to $900 per class. If you bundle them together, once you get up to the 4-class pass, it's $2,000 for 4 classes, which means you're getting each class at $500. That's the best savings that we offer. We're not going to be doing any flash sales in the year ahead. So this is your last chance to pick up a class pass until next year. And we may or may not decide to run. Last year, we ran this 4-class pass special. It was pretty popular and in demand. We decided to run it again this year as a 10th anniversary special. There's no guarantee we'll do it again. We might not. So it's a good deal. You might want to take advantage of it while it's there. And at the very least, none of our classes will be on sale to this degree until the Kickstarter next year. So those are the different options you have for rewards. And I hope that does, we had like probably 30 emails asking questions about the different rewards. So I hope that I've kind of been able to answer a lot of them at once here. All right. Well, anyway, we have, again, just a little bit of time left in the annual Kickstarter campaign. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who has already contributed. Really deeply appreciate your support. We still have, we're almost there, you guys. I can't believe what a huge put. I was like, I've been kind of like, oh, I don't know. This year's been ridiculously slow up until the last minute here. Then I'm like, okay, wow, we're making a huge push. In fact, as I'm speaking right now, we're up to, let's see. We just had a bunch of donations come in since the beginning of our program here. So we're at only now we went from 351 at the start of this program like 15 minutes ago to we still need 344. So it's like going down, by the hour. We're really, really close. So if you haven't donated already, please consider pitching in, join us for a program or pick up a calendar or something. And in the meantime, again, a big thanks to everyone who's already donated. All right, well, I will pause at about halfway through today's horoscopes. I'm going to pause and re-promote the program, just so you know. So we'll have a break after I finish Virgo. We'll go Libra through Pisces to finish. And then depending on how much time we have left, maybe I'll open up for readings or something, but I'm guessing I'm going to be probably gassed by the time we get through all the horoscopes. I'm also going to be drawing tarot cards for each of the 12 whole sign horoscopes. So if you're averse to tarot, just cover your ears. But anyway, I'll set that aside. We'll come back to that. And let me just turn over to the comments here. If someone who has already pledged comes back and pledges, orders another premium, does it count twice as a backer? If you use a different email address, it does, yes. But you can't use the same email address. And I don't think it'll let you pick up duplicates of the same reward with the same email address. So you would need to use a separate email address. Just create a different account. I chose 2 rewards. Does that count as 2 backers? No, you can bundle rewards. They have what's called an add-on feature where you could pick a reward and then add a second reward if you want like a couple of rewards. That is totally fine. I don't know how many they let you add on. Maybe they even let you add on more than 2. I don't know, but it still only counts as 1 if you use 1. But let's not try to cheat the system here. Let's try to get, I want to see if we can get that unique number of backers, and I think we'll get there. But you're more than welcome if you want to get more rewards to use a different email address, and that's fine. No big deal. I just donated. Hope you hit your mark. Thank you, Amy. We so appreciate you. That's awesome. If I support the Kickstarter, can I choose courses in 2025? Nadia, yes, you can, because they don't expire. So when you get a class pass, you're free to use those as you want. You want to take one class you get a 3-class pass. You want to take 1 class per year for the next 3 years. That's fine. They do not expire. So you can use them whenever you want. They're also transferable, and the transferableness doesn't expire. So you take one this year, next year you have 2, and you want to take another one with a friend, that's fine. So yeah, you're totally welcome to do that. Which is why we're not exactly sure if we'll offer it again too. We don't want to but it's a great deal, but we don't want to overpopulate with all of these class passes. So we may pull this back next year, to be quite honest. We're not sure yet. We're going to just see how enrollments go and stuff like that. But yeah, I donated this morning, and I truly hope you meet your goal. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we hope that you will continue to get a lot out of this channel. We hope that this channel is a place that is a really rich, profound resource, because that's what we try to do. What happens if you miss, say, 10 backers? The whole thing cancels? No, so we deliberately set a goal that's significantly under our target, because it's all or nothing backing. So because if it's all or nothing backing and we missed it by 10 backers, no one would get their card charged, right? And we wouldn't get anything. It's like you guys wouldn't lose any money, but we would lose everything. We wouldn't get any of the pledges. So we always set, for every single year, we have always set the minimum funding goal significantly below our actual goal, so that once we surpass that, we're like, okay, well, at least we'll take home something, even if we don't meet our goal, which obviously is the minimum is usually something that's close to our keep the lights on number, just keep, what's the bare minimum that we really need here? But, obviously we have to go beyond that to meet, to build out the website, to develop the affordable reading service, right? Those are huge expenses and a lot of, staff hours that go into building those kinds of things, and paying a staff to manage the affordable reading service. There's a lot on the back end that goes into stuff like that. So 1,777 backers is reflective of where we think the numbers will be financially if we hit that backer total. And we are getting closer to it. If we hit 1777, I think we're going to be very close to our target financial numbers, within wiggle room enough where it'll happen, even if it takes a little bit longer, or it's not quite as quick as we want. It doesn't matter. It'll happen if we get to that 1777 number. And right now it's looking more and more like we will. So, but we still need that last big push. Yeah, I hope that's clarifying. All right. So anyway, on that note, let's start talking about the Pluto and Uranus square. I'm going to put the chart up on the screen, and let's get into it. So here is here's what I want to discuss, and I'm going to all right. Here's the thing is that right now these two planets are already configured. Oh, the big arrow came out. You know it's going to be a good day if the big arrow is like, it's my turn right away. So, oh my God, it's insisting. All right, let's try it again. I want just a, there we go, just like a modest arrow. All right, so Uranus is already in a whole sign trine to Pluto. Ancient astrologers, they looked at aspects in really, really different ways than we do as modern astrologers. That's something we cover in my courses, and it will forever change the way you look at charts. It will forever help you understand whole sign houses, and it will forever help you understand the difference between a whole sign aspect and a degree-based aspect. So at some point, you may want to study that. But the point here is that they're already configured by a whole sign trine, which is why we want to look beyond the horizon of just a calendar year to understand a dynamic that's already starting to unfold. Let's watch how things change. And I am going to actually, you know what, just to make this a little easier, let's put Aquarius on the ascendant. All right, so watch what happens when we get, there's Pluto going into Aquarius in January. Now I want you to watch Uranus. While Pluto's kind of doing its thing, you see how Uranus now is within 6 degrees of moving into the degree-based trine with Pluto in Aquarius. So this means that they're starting to configure to one another by trine in a degree-based aspect. And they're doing so, you know, this is by the spring, summer in the Northern Hemisphere of 2024. So they're already starting to get together. Look at how close they get. Now they're just about 4 degrees apart. And then Uranus stations at 27. Pluto retrogrades into late Capricorn at 29. Now they're configured in a trine whole sign back in the Earth signs, but within 2 degrees. So with outer planets, this means that their trine is already being activated in 2024. Most of us just aren't paying attention to it because we tend to only pay attention to degree-based aspects and only when they perfect. So most people, most astrologers will look at this as a 2025 transit when we really should be looking at it as something that's starting to form in the year ahead, even though it's sort of the actual critical mass event is 2025 and 6 and so forth. So now, if we go forward just a little bit, now, you know, Uranus backs off through the trine, Pluto enters Aquarius again, and they kind of separate a bit. Pluto's working its way into Aquarius at 3 degrees here. This is by May of 2025. Then look what happens. Uranus enters Gemini. Now, as it enters Gemini, now they're both in air signs, and here we have their trine at the same degree. Now, they're not at the same minute yet, and Uranus is going to station. And as it stations and turns retrograde, it's going to sort of separate from the trine to Pluto. But it's not down to the minute, but it is by the degree. And that is really significant because for most of us, we will really start feeling that trine right here, which is around August, the late summer of 2025. And then we're going to notice that trine all the way through September of 2025. We'll notice it hanging around in the air by October, November of 2025. Okay, then they split because Uranus backs into Taurus. Now they're configured in a whole sign square, but they're really still like dancing in their trine. So we move this forward a little bit more, and you're going to notice that Pluto kind of deepens its journey into Aquarius, turns retrograde around the spring of 2026 as Uranus has once again entered Gemini. Now their trine is going to actually connect. Here is Pluto at 438. Here's Uranus at 412. Now they're getting together. This is about July 18th of 2026. I've looked at this a few times, guys, because, you know, my solar return is July 16th. So I was like, wow, you know, that'll be quite a solar return. That Pluto will be on my midheaven which is about 5 Aquarius in my chart too. So I'm like, oh shit. You know, you guys ever have, do you ever feel that way when you look at a transit and you go, oh my God, what'll that be? So yeah, this is going to be really exciting though. This is a very powerful trine between two planets that have quite a history in terms of mundane archetypal astrology. I'm going to tell you more about that in a second, but there they are connecting by a trine in the summer of 2026. The point is, just because it's happening in 2026 does not mean that the manifestation or expression of their combination is not already in the works in 2024. See, when planets start approaching each other, especially outer planets, their actual configuration takes a long time. It's like tectonic plates that are moving beneath the surface that start creating the changes well in advance of the actual connection between the planets. So that's why I'm saying in 2024, especially toward the latter part of the year, the two are starting to configure in a trine within 2 degrees in the Earth signs, right? And then in 2025, they get really close together. And then finally in 2026, they connect. Take this forward a little bit more. We're going to see that Uranus is going to retrograde. And then look, the two come back together. This is about late November of 2026, right? And then Uranus stations and turns direct. And then we're going to see Uranus come forward. And once again, it connects with Pluto in a trine. And it does so here around June of 2027. Now let's take it forward a bit. And you're going to see that the two planets come together right here. Whoops, I went a little too far. Here they're coming together one more time. And this is right around January of 2028. Okay, so I'm going to say something more about this in a second. And then look at here's their trine one more time. This is by about May of 2028. Right? And then they're going to retrograde again. And this one is like, now they're sort of separating. This is the last time they get together within about a degree, and then they really start separating out. But the point is, my God, that takes us to 2029. So, like, broadly speaking, we're talking about an aspect that starts, it gets to within 2 degrees in the Earth signs this year. And then the trine gradually comes together and does its dance over the next 5 years. Why aren't we talking about that? You know what I mean? And the main reason we don't talk about it is because we only think in terms of calendar years. And even myself, I'll find myself limiting what I'm talking about in projections for YouTube or clients or whatever in terms of calendar years, because I think that the astrology somehow conspires to our calendar. And it doesn't. You know, the astrology actually offers us a variety of different calendars we could use, lunar calendars we don't use, you know, all sorts of different synodic cycles that we could use to inform a more nuanced, interesting, ritualistic, sort of psychedelic way of keeping time. But we don't, and that's fine. I'm not trying to hate on our calendar necessarily. But the point is that as astrologers, we should be thinking about time, space, and the future according to the different kinds of timelines that are starting to unfold before us. This is a very powerful one that I don't think we're talking enough about. That I mean, some astrologers are. I don't mean to say like, oh, I'm the only one, but certainly we could be talking about this more. So what exactly does this mean? Now, hold on just one second, because I had a book that I was ready to go, but I left it in my closet because you guys want to see something I do, by the way? All right, so I'm going to turn this. Oh, you know what? I can't. Oh, this one. So that's my little, that is a closet that is covered wall to wall with books. You can't see the other walls, but they're just covered in books. And a lot of the times, if you want to know like where I am in the morning, I sit in there. And I sit on the floor and I read with a notebook and I take my notes as I prepare for you guys. And I sit there and I write in, when can I say society really loud? So anyway, let me grab a book. I'll be right back. Ooh, that was loud. All right. So I'm going to, well, you know, of course I wouldn't do it. I took my bookmark out Sometimes I'm such a space case, guys. It's Mars and Gemini. I get like 4 different books going, and I've got all these notes, and then I just go, okay, I'll just go start the live stream. I haven't. This is why I don't usually do live streams, because I get real spacey. All right, let's see here. So, here we go. And yes, okay, we're going to go to page 139, and we're going to talk about okay. So this is from Richard Tarnas's book, Cosmos and Psyche, one of my most well-loved, well-worn, like well-read books. Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas is a book on the mundane astrology, the archetypal mundane astrology of the outer planets, for the most part. Anyway, he talks about the combination of Uranus-Pluto, which was present in a conjunction, by the way, in the 1960s. And he really names that as the planetary combination that was sort of responsible for the eruption of counterculture, rock and roll, activism, and kind of the youth movement that was the 1960s. So he talks about that a lot in this book. But anyway, the Uranus-Pluto cycle is one of the longest of all planetary cycles because of Pluto's eccentric orbit. Conjunctions and oppositions between the two occur only once each per century, with each such alignment lasting approximately 12 years. And then he goes on and talks about it. To recapitulate briefly the nature of the archetypal principles associated with these two planets, the planet Uranus appears to be correlated with events and biographical phenomenon suggestive of an archetypal principle whose essential character is Promethean, emancipatory, rebellious, progressive, and innovative, awakening, disruptive, and destabilizing, unpredictable, serving to catalyze new beginnings and sudden unexpected change. The planet Pluto, by contrast, is associated with an archetypal principle whose character is Dionysian, elemental, instinctual, powerfully compelling, extreme in its intensity, arising from the depths, both libidinal and destructive, overwhelming and transformative, ever evolving. On the collective level, the archetypal principle associated with Pluto is regarded as possessing a prodigious titanic dimension, empowering, intensifying, and compelling whatever it touches on a massive scale. When I applied these specific archetypal meanings to an examination of the historical periods that coincided with the sequence of major alignments of Uranus-Pluto, it was immediately apparent that not only were these two archetypal principles each conspicuously active in the collective psyche in these particular eras, they were also in some sense combining with each other, acting upon each other, mutually inflecting and synergistically merging. The resulting archetypal complex seemed to express itself quite dramatically during those specific historical eras in which Uranus and Pluto were in axial alignment, as evidenced by such phenomenon as widespread radical social and political change, and often destructive upheaval, massive empowerment of revolutionary and rebellious impulses, and intensified artistic and intellectual creativity. Other distinctive themes of these historical periods included unusually rapid technological advance, an underlying spirit of restless experiment, drive for innovation, urge for freedom in many realms, revolt against oppression, embrace of radical political philosophies, and intensified collective will to bring forth a new world. These impulses and events were typically mixed with massive demographic shifts and a general ambiance of fervent, often violent intensity combined with the excitement of moving rapidly towards new horizons. For example, Uranus and Pluto were in alignment not only during the entire decade of the 1960s, when they were in conjunction, but also the entire decade of the French Revolution, when they were in opposition. This was, of course, an era whose character was conspicuously similar to that of the 1960s, to which it has often been compared. So he goes on for quite a long while in the book to describe the combination of Uranus and Pluto. The important thing is to note that the archetypal combination that's present with Uranus-Pluto configured in a trine is generally smoother, more harmonious, and less about the kind of squaring off of these energies through more sort of violent confrontational depictions, so or representation. So when you put them in a square, a conjunction, an opposition, the two planets tend to create that powerful upheaval, breakthroughs, advancement, progress, rebellion, defiance, with the kind of upsurge of energy from the underworld. Those themes become much more confrontational, much more about the kind of clash of wills and struggle to birth new paradigms through resistance and war and bloodshed and so on. We do have some other transits that are during this period that are like Saturn and Neptune getting together in Aries, for example. Like, okay. So I'm not saying that the entire period will be conflict free. I mean, we're humans, right? But the point is that through a trine, the two planets are configured together more positively. There's more of a fluid exchange between the two, which should mean that the qualities of revolution and the death and rebirth of Pluto and the kind of revolution of Uranus coming together should be more constructive. It's also very airy, being into air signs, which typically means that we're talking about the ideas by means of which we understand ourselves as humans, the means by which we construct civil society, the means by which we advance the discourse in different fields that are intellectual and scientific by nature, but also cultural. So how are we evolving culturally? There's a kind of a feeling of magic with Uranus in Gemini. It's very experimental and curious and technological. And Pluto in Aquarius also suggests paradigm changes around things like medicine, technology, infrastructure, the ideas by means of which we're evolving as a collective. So it's a very kind of, it's an interesting time, and one that's probably going to feature, a lot of the structures of our mind and our mental and intellectual disciplines, like changing, or the quality of innovation and invention technologically is probably one of the most obvious. But it's also like, when we start looking at it personally, we're really starting to talk about the way in which our social identity is going to be transformed, or the ideas that govern our life. Air signs are full of ideas. So when you see these titanic changes with Pluto entering Aquarius, Uranus entering Gemini, you're really talking about the way in which your own personal mind is going to change, and the ideas that connect you to other people and that place you somewhere meaningfully in the collective are going to go through a change. For different people, that's going to mean radically different things based on every individual birth chart. But at the very least today, we can look at the whole sign horoscopes and get a feel for what areas of life that might be touching in on topically, right? Because the whole sign houses give us a sense of which topical domains in your life the planets and the archetypes are presenting themselves. And that's how we make this more personal, because really the outer planets are they're almost best used in a collective context on some level, as Richard Tarnas does. So to bring them into the personal takes a little bit of work, and usually we feel them most personally, not just by house placement, but when they actually start aspecting traditional planets in the birth chart. That's when they really are experienced as having a personal connection to us. But there's often overlap. When they make strong personal connections through aspects in the natal chart, it's often that the experience is not just about the archetypes of, say, Pluto and Uranus, but also the way in which the collective events reflected by Pluto and Uranus in their trine are now becoming personal to us. So, all right. So on that note, let's take a look. Let us put the chart on the screen, and we are going to, let me change my wheel style here. So what I'm going to do now is don't take the date that you see on the date that you see here on the calendar is irrelevant. All I'm trying to do is show you the connection between the whole sign houses. And remember, this is something that starts forming in 2025, but lasts all the way until 2029. It's a long period. The two planets are starting to configure by trine this year, but you want to pay close attention to the fact that you're going to really notice this in your chart, probably starting in the summer of 2025 if you're in the northern hemisphere. And then it has a long shelf life. It lasts from 25 to about 29. That it's very dynamically engaged. So this is a fun way of looking at furthering the conversation, by the way, that we've been having about Pluto entering Aquarius. Because Pluto's entrance into Aquarius is just part of a story that for the first handful of years that Pluto is in Aquarius is very much engaged. You can't isolate it because it's engaged in this conversation with Uranus. So again, that's sort of why we're doing this. So if you're new and you want to understand something, by the way, about how horoscopes work, here is how all sun sign horoscopes work. Let me just show you. If you're a horoscope writer, what you're doing is you're taking the rising sign and you're putting it on the ascendant. You're taking the sun, if you're doing a sun sign, excuse me, you're taking the sun sign and you're putting it on the ascendant. So if I'm doing sun sign horoscopes for Aries, I'm looking at the transits as though it's a whole sign birth chart with Aries rising, which is why you can listen to it for your sun or your rising. Because if you're not an Aries sun and you're an Aries rising, these transit descriptions will be going through the same whole sign houses as your birth chart because you're an Aries rising. Well, some people listen to sun sign horoscopes. They don't know that unless you're actually an Aries rising with the sun in Aries in the first house, your sun sign horoscope is not configured to the actual layout of your birth chart. It's a divinatory symbolic approach. It's not rooted in the same layout as your birth chart unless you have the sun in the first house. So we recommend, generally speaking, traditional astrologers will recommend listening for your rising sign, because when you listen for your rising sign and you use whole sign houses, it's the exact same as your birth chart, which means you're getting the actual locations the planets are traveling through in your birth chart. So, there's symbolic significance for sun sign horoscopes too. It's a form of divination. So, either can speak in some way, but I recommend listening for your rising sign because that will cohere with the actual transits to your natal chart. So anyway, that's the gist of that. Okay, so now we have the first sign, and I'm going to go through these one at a time, and we're going to talk about the whole sign house configurations. Now, again, don't pay attention to the date. This is, broadly speaking, 2025 through 29. Where are things heading with Pluto's entrance into Aquarius and the trine to Uranus in Gemini? So if you're an Aries rising, Pluto's entering your 11th. Oh, there's the big arrow again. Oh my God, he's like, the big arrow is insistent. He's like, no, I will be present today. There's only 2 days left in the Kickstarter. All right, here we go. So Aries rising, Pluto's entered your 11th house. Remember that the basic idea of the 11th house is, we in modern astrology, people associate it with Aquarius through what's called the 12-letter alphabet. Ancient astrologers did not associate the 11th house with Aquarius. They associated it with Jupiter. And they broadly associated the 11th house with things that we are hopeful about that exist in the future. Because the 11th house is in the process by the diurnal motion of moving up to the top of the sky, this was called the house of aspirations, wishes, dreams. And it was the house of allies or benefactors who were somehow conducive to your reaching of your dreams and goals. So it is connected to groups of people, but only insofar as those groups of people have something in common with you and help you reach or achieve long-term hopes, aspirations, dreams, or goals. So when Pluto enters that house, it can do a couple of things. It can start radically reorienting your long-term dreams, goals, visions, hopes, wishes, and aspirations for your life, usually in terms of what you're trying to accomplish within the realm of societal power and like vocations and societal engagement, right? It's not like, well, I'd really like to get good at knitting in the privacy of my own home where nobody's watching. It's not, that'd be more of a fifth house activity, for example. But the 11th house has to do with your aspirations that engage you in the world, in the collective, with some role to play or something you hope to achieve or something like that. For some people, that's not such a huge deal, in their natal charts will show us that. Regardless, Pluto entering that house is starting to reconfigure your dreams, hopes, and aspirations. And by extension, will connect you with different allies. And with the sign of Aquarius being a fixed air sign, that might mean different groups of allies, especially when the sign of Aquarius is in the 11th house. It doesn't always mean that. But with Aquarius in particular in that house, the larger groups whose ideological direction is similar to your own, with similar dreams and aspirations. So you think of a significant change of paradigm, significant changes in allies, friends, colleagues, and networks of people, and long-term dreams, goals, and aspirations undergoing deep change in your life as an Aries. So that's a kind of general archetypal meaning of Pluto in the 11th. When you start moving that into a trine with Uranus in the 3rd, it gets really interesting, because the 3rd house is called the joy of the moon, and it was called Dia, or goddess. And it is really the house of the environment of your life, which for most of us means the culture of our lives. So for example, like the culture of my life in large part is very Minnesotan because I grew up here. So there's like a significant part of my life that identifies as like a Midwesterner. But there's other cultures that are not just based on where I live, right? For example, I would say creative or artistic culture and astrological and spiritual culture. You know, we don't belong to just one culture. Most of us have like different cultures that we sort of identify with. But regardless, if you think about if I'm a fish and I'm living in a fish tank, what does that fish tank look like? What does the environment, the habitat that I'm in look like? Emotionally, mentally, in terms of the people I associate with, and in terms of the cultures I inhabit. Uranus entering that house is the god of awakening, of liberation, of the disruption and changing of patterns. So mind, emotions, environment, and culture going through a kind of awakening, reorientation, and shift. That can mean that new things occupy your mind. It can mean that radical changes come into the everyday environment to disrupt what you're used to. They are also connected with these larger social dynamics that are changing in the 11th house and the reconfiguring of long-term dreams, ambitions, goals, and the people that help you get there. So we're talking about a significant change of culture, people, goals, aspiration, and the kinds of people that help you get there, as well as the way in which those changes end up also being reflected in the kind of culture and everyday environment of your life. It's a pretty significant social reorientation and, again, a reorientation of aspirations or long-term ideals for Aries. That's coming in the next couple of years. I am going to pull a card. Oh, I really like this. This is a good card. So I like to pull a card and let the card speak, teach, instruct. Whatever it has to say is what it has to say. So for Aries, the card that I drew is the Queen of Cups. This is really important because I like to think of the Queen of Cups as a bit like the sign of Cancer, or a bit like the moon. And why would this card come up with such a horoscope? Well, let's go back to the horoscope for a second and think about it. Well, what's the one thing that could easily get lost in the shuffle of so much airy transformation, upheaval, revolution? It might be emotional sensitivity and intelligence. When I see the Queen of Cups here, I think to myself, okay, first of all, perhaps for Aries, there's the change that's happening is in order to facilitate greater emotional connection with other people, which isn't always intuitive for Aries, right? And I'm not saying there's anything like that Aries people don't have emotions or are emotionally dumb or something like that. But it could be that the shift happening socially is being made in order to create a more sensitive, connected ecosystem in your life, one that is more fluid and harmonious on the level of emotional intelligence. And that might be kind of counterintuitive, right? When it's all air. But you have to remember that the base of your chart is Cancer. And during this period, by the way, in 2025, as this is getting started, Jupiter's going to spend an entire year in Cancer in the 4th house. So there's some either a warning or an instruction or something about making sure that with all of this kind of cultural, intellectual, social transformation that's coming for Aries, that you don't forget the need for like there needs to be like a queen that's also there with her emotional wisdom guiding the way. That's how I would look at that. It's just kind of like a moment of teaching for Aries rising. All right. Well, that is what we have to say about Aries. We're going to move on now. By the way, sometimes I get people, and I'm just going to address this because I think it's worth addressing. Sometimes people will say, I find that horoscopes are too vague and not specific enough. And here's the thing, is that when you do horoscopes without the specifics of a birth chart, in my humble opinion, it's better to talk about the most basic archetypal themes and topics that are likely to come up in combination, rather than trying to venture super specific guesses, educated guesses, but still guesses that might narrow it down and hit directly for like a few people, but then are too specific to be broad enough to they're not valuable enough because they're not broad enough for a huge amount of other people. So, it's always good to give a few examples when you're doing archetypal horoscopes. Like it could be this or it could be that. But you don't ever want to be too specific with archetypal horoscopes because you really risk alienating a lot more people than you do when you nail it for a small group of people, So that's always my philosophy when it comes to these. When it comes to a natal chart readings can be much more specific and predictive, and which is why, most people are going to get more out of them eventually. But at the same time, horoscopes are super valuable because it's like a very specific topical and thematic weather report. And that in itself, for most people, if you can listen to the themes and work with them creatively, you'll end up noticing them, and they are very accurate in their own way. Anyway, let's go on to Taurus. So with Taurus, and I take interest in this one because I'm a Taurus rising. So I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. So Pluto enters your 10th house. Remember, Indian astrologers called the 10th house Arta, the place of power. There are 4 philosophical areas that Indian philosophy frequently talks about: Dharma, Arta, Kama, Moksha. Dharma being like the character role that you're bound to play, and the gifts and duties that kind of come with the character that you are born to play. It's the first house. The 10th house, Arta, has to do with the development of your skills, abilities, mastery, knowledge, rank, fame, occupation, status, maybe even wealth or success in the eyes of the larger society. So, so when you're in the 10th house, most of us are thinking about the role we play in the larger civic fabric of our lives. I'm always coming up. You would not believe the amount of ways that I found to say the word society, by the way. So when Pluto enters that house, the first thing that starts happening is your place in the world, your occupation, can transform radically. You're talking about the sometimes the death and rebirth of your career, or how you do your work in the world, or your notoriety. And for many people, Pluto will be tremendously empowering in the 10th house. The word Pluto means riches. And so there's a way in which moving into a greater, like a different stratosphere when it comes to power, rank, fame, position, authority, responsibility, it can all shoot through the roof when something like Pluto enters your 10th house. At the same time, Pluto entering the 10th can dismantle and totally recreate your career. So for some people, it's going to be death and then rebirth. For other people, it's going to be about stepping into the Plutonian realm of social power structures and the kind of more responsibility and power, and having to work at a deeper level with the shadows that come with being of a higher rank or being more visible. So a tremendously diverse set of themes that can come up with Pluto in the 10th. Exploration of shadows around power, rank, fame, position, responsibility, and authority. Also the kind of dismantling and rebuilding of your career. That can mean changing careers, or it can mean completely changing the way in which you do your work, or the title, and so on and so forth. Pluto going through the 10th can be about a time where you are becoming visibly more masterful relative to your post. That doesn't mean you're becoming, the world's most famous person, but it can mean that if you're a carpenter or if you're a builder or something, that you are starting to take visible strides to being at the top of your field, one of the leading experts of your field, or even just among those more experienced veterans of your field, and you might see things that start to resemble or reflect that accomplishment happening, in your work around you, like a promotion or something. But Pluto in the 10th also just means the long, slow process of alchemical change coming through the role you play in your job, your work, or your public facing identity. So that process is at work for Taurians now. It's got started last spring, not starting off in a big way this year, as it spends most of the year in that sign. And then it starts configuring itself to Uranus in the second house. Now, the second house was literally associated with your garden and what grew in it, like what you had at your disposal that was your possession that could support your existence, physically especially. So it's associated with food, what you grow in your garden, what skills you have that could be marketable or profitable or that you could use to survive by. It's also anything that you develop as a resource, whether that means I'm going to develop a new set of skills to make money with, or I have certain things that I'm in possession of that I can sell in the marketplace, or it's literally your movable possessions, like my guitar, my books, or something. I can see what I care about. Those are my only possessions: my Jeep, guitar, and books. And then I've got kids in tow. So anyway, you have Uranus is in the second house. You think about a revolution around your resources. This means you could be doing business differently. You could be developing or utilizing different skills. You could be finding greater freedom, flexibility, emancipation, liberation around money and resources. But Uranus in the second is trying to shift radically the resources you have or how you use them. And it's doing so in a conversation with Pluto, who is trying to completely reconfigure the way you show up in the world, the power and responsibility you work with in the world, the kind of vocation you have, the recognition you have or don't have, or whatever. So these two planets working together are very powerful for Taurus risings when it comes to especially career and money. Now let me draw a card for our let me draw a card for Tauruses. All right. Just one more. Interesting. So sometimes I draw two if I want qualifiers. Usually if like a heavy card comes up, I'll sort of go like, okay, give me some qualifying information so that I don't scare people, including myself as a Taurus rising, by the way. So the first card that came up is the 10 of Swords. Ooh, one of the most ominous cards in the tarot. But then I drew a qualifying card and I said, how can I understand this 10 of Swords? And I got the 2 of Cups. So this will frequently mean that something is going to end. And then when you see the 2 of Cups as the qualifying card, you often get the idea that a new relationship is going to be formed because something else has reached a very critical moment of ending. The 10 of Swords is like death. It is the end of something, finality. And then the 2 of Cups is about the formation of a new bond or relationship. I can't help but think in the case of Tauruses that those two cards coming up together suggest the Plutonian themes of death and rebirth in the career, along with the establishment maybe of new business relationships or new collaborations that are taking place. As one old thing ends, the formation of new bonds or new ways of working together with other people are forming. So I think those two cards together are actually quite instructive and positive overall. But it does suggest that for Tauruses, there might be some critical endings, some things that happen where it's like over, final, finito. And then the promise of the trine between Uranus and Pluto might be the establishment of new relationships, new ways of working together with other people, new contracts, new bonds that are forming, probably ones that are quite liberating. Okay. I like Michelle's comment. Don't get stabbed out here, right? Okay. So let's go on now, and we will put Uranus on the ascendant with Gemini rising. So for Gemini rising, I have to say, if you Geminis out there aren't excited about this, you should be, because this is one of the more exciting of the Uranus-Pluto combinations, in my humble opinion. Now, what are we saying about Pluto entering the ninth house? The ninth house is the place of our understanding, wisdom and understanding, whether it's spiritual, religious, academic, and intellectual. It's our understanding of a particular subject. Maybe it's your understanding of the tax code or the legal system if you go to law school. The ninth house is associated with any systems of information that we come to understand or know through study. It's also about the dogmas and doctrines of various religious and spiritual traditions. It is a place where we orient ourselves morally and spiritually through understanding, through learning, and through expanding of our mind and our horizons, sometimes through travel or pilgrimage. So as a place of understanding, when Pluto, for Geminis, when Pluto enters that ninth house, you're immediately thinking about this complete transformation of your understanding. It's not just to take place all at once, right? It's almost 2 decades. But I mean, when Pluto entered my ninth house in Capricorn, because I got Capricorn in the ninth, that was when I started studying astrology. And it was like astrology started firmly establishing itself as my most profound and powerful, like intellectual and spiritual interest. I started like consuming everything I could, learning and studying and taking classes. And so Pluto's entrance into the ninth house for Geminis could signal the beginning of a very long and very invested learning process. Teachers, learning new subjects, religion and spirituality, spiritual experience, and the slow and powerful transformation of your moral and spiritual compass. This is also about the intensity, depth, and transformation of beliefs and belief systems in general for Geminis. This is also about how those belief systems connect you with other human beings. Now, at the exact same time, you have Uranus, the god of revolution, emancipation, this kind of Promethean torch entering your first house. That's the place where we start thinking about personal change. How am I being asked to completely transform myself on the level of my psychology, my personality, my health, my physical appearance? The need to experiment, change, and break the mold personally, in other words, a kind of personal renaissance and awakening, is coinciding with this shift of beliefs, with this powerful emphasis on learning and understanding. And the paradigm changes implied by Pluto in the ninth are connecting with the need for personal revolution that Uranus in the first is bringing in. No doubt these will also be social. They will be about how you connect to other people through ideas and through the change of ideas that represents a change in you. So really powerful for anytime that Uranus enters your first house. As I can speak to as a Taurus rising. Taurus risings are all having gone through Uranus in our first for some years now. It is a very freeing and liberating planet to have go through your first house, but it will require that you shake off old ideas about yourself and dare to introduce new original thoughts and ways of being. So that's coinciding again with this emphasis on a transformation of beliefs, learning, and higher understanding with Pluto in the ninth. All right, so let me just scroll through my cards here. Yeah, I like this card a lot. This is a nice card for our Geminis. So Geminis out there, the card that I drew for you is the Two of Wands, which you can see there's a guy kind of standing there and he's got a couple of wands. He's got the globe in his hand. He's sort of looking out over the horizon. Aside from any very distasteful comparisons to like Christopher Columbus or some kind of colonialist, some kind of colonizer, let's not go there. Let's think about it more positively. But I mean, the thing that I go to with this card right away is that you're gathering resources and you're considering a whole different world. That like you have the world in your hand and you're sort of looking out and going, what's the direction to go in? Notice that the world in the hand also is reflective of Pluto entering the ninth house, the place of foreign travel. Could it be that this personal revolution literally takes you abroad? The other thing to consider here is just that Uranus in the first house with Pluto in the ninth is like you're entering a very different world and all sorts of possibilities are opening up. And to consider which way you'll go, what you'll do with what you have and the open horizons in front of you is all implied by the Two of Wands. And that's really exciting, I think. So let's go back to the chart on the screen. an opening up of horizons and possibilities. And that, well, maybe the hardest thing about it is knowing which one to choose or where to go, or where in this new world of possibilities should you what should you pursue. And the other thing to remember with Uranus and Gemini in the first house, anytime you have Uranus in the first house, you're going to explore and experiment with a lot of different things. It's not just one. Over the course of 7 years while Uranus goes through your first house, you can try on different possibilities. The one thing I love about the Two of Wands is how open it is to different horizons, different possibilities, and the sense that anything is possible. So love that. Love that Two of Wands coming up for you, Geminis. All right, let's go forward. We'll put Cancer on the ascendant. So with Cancer on the ascendant, we have the connection between Pluto in the 8th and Uranus in the 12th. Now, on the surface, that might look like a little scary because those houses are a little ominous. Throughout the history of astrology, those two houses have been associated with some very challenging topics. And the trine connection here, you might immediately just think, oh gosh, well, I'm screwed because they're in difficult houses or whatever. But the trine connection will mitigate a lot of what appears like a difficult horoscope. So just kind of stick with it as I go through it here. Now, first of all, Pluto in the 8th is, as someone who's also lived through Pluto in the 8th, and if you're a Taurus rising, it was born like I was in the early 80s, like you've been through it. So Pluto, when it goes through the 8th house, remember that the 8th house was called the esteem of others. How do other people value you? How do they look at your worth? What do they give you because of how they value you? Time, energy, money, resources, referrals, connections. It's the same reason that the house is connected with the topic of inheritance. What are you given by how people valued you after they die? The 8th house is associated with death, but it's also associated with the fear and anxiety of the future. It's associated with karmic penalties, things that we owe, but it's also associated with those things that are coming to us as a matter of karma from other people. So when Pluto enters that house, the potential for remember, the word Pluto means riches. For riches to come to us from others is one of the most powerful significations of Pluto in the 8th house. That there is a tremendous pool of energy that's going to start coming up through the people in your life, which in Aquarius could mean your connection to the collective. For example, if you're a business owner and Pluto's entering your 8th house, that can be great for business. The reason it can be great for business is it can suggest with Pluto and Aquarius in the 8th that the pooled resources of a large group of people who value your product or your services are going to be coming to you, surging up from the underworld like water that's in a well beneath the surface that you can now draw up. So it is very possible that Cancers are going to start experiencing tremendous upsurge of interest, support, resources from others in the decades to come, because it's your time. It's your time to start receiving a kind of karmic debt or inheritance that the universe has prepared for you in this lifetime. And that's one of the most exciting things. Of course, what could come with it are all of the explorations of the shadow that come with being in receipt of other people's resources, right? So if you become really popular while Pluto's in the 8th house, you know that it's not going to last forever, because it's like an inheritance. It's a big chunk of money, but you could easily blow it. You could easily run through it and spend it, and then it will be gone. So you have to remember that what's given in the 8th house is something like, it's like a little bit of a lottery ticket. And you have to be really careful and wise, knowing that this is rooted in what other people are giving you and what comes to you through others, and not something that's innately your own. And so if you can keep that in mind, then you can utilize those resources, knowing that they're not going to last forever and ever. But if you use them wisely, they can provide a kind of foundation from which you can work, similar to the way that I see people in 8th house transits receive an inheritance. And if they use it wisely, it can support the rest of their life to have a little bit more flexibility, right? Unless you receive like a massive fortune or something and then you're just set. But even then, in the next lifetime, that fortune won't be there, right? You see what I mean? So the 8th house is about things that come to us, but with Pluto, you have to remember that those things, like if it's popularity doesn't last forever. What do you do with that period of popularity? Do you set up things that are going to help you establish your career over a long period of time? Or do you burn out really quickly because you get too high on the popularity you receive? It's always a kind of devil's bargain with the eighth house. So Pluto entering that house for Cancerians is very interesting. On the other hand, the idea of karmic debts coming up, that like bills that will surface that you have to pay back, or that you have to, that there will be debts that come up that act as like losses or taxes karmically. That's the heavy part that nobody likes about the eighth house. So, and that's what, it's very possible while Pluto's going through your eighth that you may have some experiences of loss, right? Of karmic bills that come due, and not necessarily that you did anything to be punished for. It's just a matter of losses that happen in the realm of the people that we're connected to, that we either owe something to, or that there are losses connected to. A grandmother might die when Pluto enters the eighth house, for example. Your dog might pass, right? And there's this feeling of like, oh, it feels like I was just taxed by the universe. My happiness was drained a little bit because something that I'm dependent upon, that I'm connected to, was taken from me. Now, it could be your money too. Maybe the tax bill comes due or something like that, right? Those are the hard parts about the eighth house that nobody's really comfortable with. But we should also say that one of the things that happens when we are released from karmic bondage is greater creative freedom and the possibility to enter new forms of social or karmic contract with other people, which can be greatly beneficial. So the death and rebirth around your bonds with other people, what you give and what you receive from them, what's owed to you and what you owe to others or the universe at large, the gods. So Pluto's doing a lot of work in there for Cancerians. And then we have Uranus in the 12th. Uranus in the 12th house is really fascinating because you're talking about the blind spot for Cancerians, which often is the kind of deconstructive, mental, analytical, objective, airy intellect. Cancers don't identify with that. In fact, sometimes they find that space to be deeply frustrating or impersonal, right? So, however, Uranus, a god of revolution, entering that house could be helping Cancerians to develop a little bit more of a healthy, objective, intellectual, and rational understanding, which paired with your tremendous emotional intelligence might be just what you need. And this is also important because when Uranus is in the 12th, trining Pluto in the 8th, we're talking about the discernment that you're going to be developing as you go through this experience of paying off debts or receiving inheritance, so to speak, from the universe. As that happens, you're also going to develop a kind of discernment, a kind of intellectual, rational, objective, slightly more detached ability to say that exchange is a good, healthy one, and this one is not. And I'm able to see that because I've learned how to take some of my emotions out of it. I've learned how to take personal attachments out of it. So that's one of the benefits of Uranus trining Pluto from the 12th to the 8th. Greater discernment, greater intellectual capacity to reflect sort of analytically and objectively upon things that are either good or not so good for you, that lead you in the right direction versus the wrong direction. So you'll get a clear sense of that. You'll also, one of the things that can happen is just your mind is going to be changing with Uranus in the 12th house. Unconscious material related to your mental and emotional intelligence is going to be unlocked as Uranus works through the 12th in the trine to Pluto in the 8th. Let me draw a card. All right, next card. Aha. Yeah, I like this. Let me ask, I'm just going to pair it with one more. Interesting. Okay, first of all, I love this because I drew two cards. Let me stop sharing my screen. Okay, so the first card I drew is the Page of Cups, which is, pages when they appear, if you guys know a little bit about tarot, they often indicate a kind of person that may come into your life and a person that offers something that, let me see the little fish popping out of the cup. I often find that when people like pages enter a spread, that they'll be correlated with a person that will enter my life. And Page of Cups in particular is like an emotionally charismatic person, or it could indicate that there's something I'm going to become very like emotionally charismatic or excited about. Like sometimes this card comes up when like literally like a baby's being born or you're finding out about a pregnancy. But also I look at this card and I say, okay, for Cancerians with Pluto in the 8th and Uranus in the 12th, there's a lot of emotional, like maybe a lot of emotional excitement. And this could very well also point to the need to be very rational, very careful, very discerning because of how excited you could get about things that maybe pull you off course a little bit or entangle you in things that are more complicated than they appear on the surface because of how much emotional excitement there is at the outset of something. So be a little bit careful about that, like maybe some pointing to discernment, giving the contrast between this card and the placement of Pluto and Uranus. The other card that I drew to qualify was the King of Cups. So another court card in the suit of cups, which is water, so the element of water. And I look at these two cards together, and in a sequence, I really see them as pointing toward a greater, like a greater emotional authority and a greater emotional intelligence. That you're able to harness enthusiasm and use it effectively, but also being really, really mature. Like the King of Cups to me is like same thing with the Queen on a certain level. They reflect a very mature emotional intelligence. And here with Pluto in the 8th, Uranus in the 12th, so much excitement in terms of what connects you with other people and what kinds of exchanges you're about to enter into with other people. That I would see these two cards coming together as saying, there's a lot of enthusiasm. There's kind of new soul contracts that might be emerging with new people in your life that are very powerful and important, but you're going to need a lot of emotional maturity to work with those things in ways that aren't eventually like impulsive. That's the message that comes to my mind. But if you guys have other thoughts, by the way, about any of these cards, feel free to drop them in the comment section. I'd love to, we can add, if people have understanding of tarot and something else comes to mind, shout it out. I'd love to see what you guys are saying too. All right, so that concludes our Cancer rising. I'm going to shift ahead to Leo. So we put Leo on the ascendant, and now we have the combination of Pluto entering the 7th and Uranus in the 11th. With these two planets, Pluto in the 7th is announcing a tremendous shift in relationships. So whenever Pluto enters the 7th house, and I've been seeing a lot of clients in the past year who, we've had this conversation about Pluto entering the 7th. I think it was yesterday, during yesterday's live stream, there was a woman who has Pluto entering the 7th on the descendant. Two things you have to remember about the 7th. One, it's the place of pleasure that connects us in intimacy with other beings. So marriage, sex, relationships, we're all 7th house material. So the Indian astrologers called it kama, which means bliss or pleasure. But the reason for that is because this is the place where the nocturnal space opens up as the sun sets. And that nocturnal space is associated with pleasure, with the goddess and the nocturnal sphere, which belongs to the feminine in general in ancient astrology. Now, the 7th place is also associated with the place in which planets set or disappear. And so it's also the 7th house associated with completion, death, resolution, and endings. So when Pluto enters that house, there are very powerful endings that happen. The setting or diminishing or conclusion or resolution of things in your life. And then, of course, with Pluto, the introduction of something new that comes after things end. Both Pluto in the 1st and the 7th have this powerful effect of death and rebirth. The 1st is more connected with personal identity rebirthing. The 7th is really about the death and rebirthing of relationships primarily, but it can also be about the way in which you generally shift from like one era to another in your life through profound endings or completions. So when Pluto enters the 7th, just think about one of the themes that can come up is just generally speaking, completion, closure, endings. Then gradually starts dawning new things. But usually those new things in the 7th are going to be about the most important or meaningful relationships and things like marriage, partnership, and intimacy, interpersonal relationships, things like that. So Pluto for Leos, Pluto is creating a very deep and lasting set of changes in the house of love and relationships and in the house of closure and endings. You may have already experienced that a little bit in this past year when Pluto started into the seventh last, I think it was March, April, May, right around there, right? I think it went till about middle of June. But you're going to experience that over these years very profoundly, especially when it hits personal planets in the seventh or in squares or oppositions in the fixed signs. The death and rebirth scenario in the seventh, people get scared of because they think, oh, my relationship is going to end. But often it's not just about, it can happen. Relationships can die and new ones can be born. New relationships can form too. Marriage can happen. Divorce can happen. It's because Pluto is so broadly associated with these powerful upheavals of unconscious material and the changes in our lives that come as a matter of having to look at that material. It can represent so many different things in the seventh that all pertain to the realm of relationships. So it's just kind of like, broadly speaking, this process of transformation is happening in that area of life. Now, the 11th house Uranus is interesting because, as we said earlier, that is the place that is connected to our long-term dreams, hopes, aspirations, and the people we associate with who are conducive to helping us get there. The people who share similar aspirations, dreams, ideological convictions, our allies, our friends, and maybe even those groups of people that share similar goals. For example, in my 11th house, there'd be a lot of astrologers, you know what I mean? Or spiritual seekers, or people who are spiritual and are, have like a business or something. Like, those are probably my allies. There's some others too, but like that would broadly constitute allies in my life. It's different for everybody. But Uranus entering that house suggests, breaking the mold when it comes to your dreams, hopes, aspirations, wishes, and the kind of people you associate with as a matter of trying to reach those dreams and goals. That kind of social revolution in the 11th is connected to a process of death and rebirth around intimate relationships. So that's really powerful, because that could mean, for example, you meet someone, and meeting new people that you fall in love with or you have deeper, more personal bonds with is simultaneously helping you to reconfigure your dreams, aspirations, and larger social alliances. So very social level of transformation for Leos as well, because we're looking at the 7th and 11th. So you kind of put those two things together. As transformation happens in relationships, it is intimately connected to this kind of renaissance or revolution in your social networks and long-term aspirations and who they connect you with. So interesting pairing there for Leos. Let's draw a card and see what we've got. Yes. Okay, so the card that I drew for Leos is the Two of Swords. So you can see the woman, or man, I guess it looks like a woman to me, but anyway, whatever, sitting under the moon with two swords crossed, blindfolded, and sitting by the water. And under the moon is really important. To me, this card, whenever I get it, reflects being at some kind of crossroad and not knowing exactly what to choose. Having trouble seeing clearly, having all of the information mentally or analytically, and it feels like I don't have all the information I need to make the best rational choice. But this card may also be inviting the kind of harmonious blending of intellect and intuition. The moon, the water, and the blindfold all suggest, like, in Star Wars, when Luke Skywalker has to put on the helmet and the visor and he has to reach out with his feelings to use his lightsaber. It's kind of like that. It's like, you're not going to be able to solve everything mentally or rationally. There is an invitation here for the marriage of emotional and analytical intelligence. And notice how that theme is persisting in many of the readings today, that with so much air, you don't want to forsake the emotional. And you don't also want to go so emotional that you forsake the intellectual. But this card, whenever I see it come up, it usually means If I'm leaning too heavily on the intellect, I need to reach out with my feelings and let my emotions and instincts play a role in how I'm making decisions or how I'm analyzing a situation, trying to solve a problem or something like that. On the other hand, when this card comes up, it could be a way of saying that I don't have all the information yet, and I'm stuck trying to make a choice with, and I have to like be in a careful position of like mindful waiting. Like be careful, be discerning, wait, trust that the right information and guidance will come in time. I don't have to try to push everything by solving it in my head when not everything is there that I need yet. So anyway, some powerful ideas for the Two of Swords. How would that apply specifically to Leos? I think that with Leos, the thing that I look at right away is when Pluto is entering the 7th and Uranus is entering the 11th, there's tremendous changes happening in your life around people and around relationships. And new possibilities are opening up that are very powerful. It could be that there's, Leos live by the heart. They're very, very emotional beings, Leo risings. And so I would say that there could be a sense of feeling a little like, what's the phrase? Paralysis by analysis when it comes to some of the social and relational changes that are happening and not knowing, well, what's the right one for my heart and soul? And so you need to trust your intuition, trust your heart, trust a process. Don't try to force it or push it. And make sure that you allow your emotions to interact with the strong new ideas that are trying to lead changes personally and relationally. That's what comes to my mind. Let's see here. All right, we're going to put Virgo on the ascendant now. After Virgo, we'll take a quick break to promote the Kickstarter, and then we'll come back. All right, so Uranus is in the 10th, Pluto's in the 6th. First of all, for Virgos, Uranus in the 10th is pretty exciting, right? Because here's Prometheus, the fire bringer, creating revolution in the career. For most people, that is a very exciting transit. If you're bored with your career, you won't be, like if you're feeling stuck or restless or tired or wanting innovation, change, if you're wanting to break the mold and shake things up in your career, Uranus will certainly do that for you if you're a Virgo rising. So that's exciting. That's coming. I see people frequently change jobs when Uranus enters the 10th house. Like that is very, very common. But also new interests, new technologies, new ways of doing business, shakeups in a company you belong to, and just the general impulse to pursue emancipation and originality and to do so somewhat defiantly, to be okay with taking risks in your career and the development of your public-facing self, to break the mold, to not care so much how people see you or what they think, to become a little bit of an eccentric dissident, So powerful Uranus in the 10th. Now, Pluto in the 6th is really interesting. You guys might remember, maybe Alex and I talked about this when we did horoscopes recently for January. One of the things that I said was that the 6th house was called the joy of Mars. And in addition to it being a place where you often have to persevere and overcome hardships or obstacles or some degree of conflict, even sickness or frustrations that you have to overcome. And Mars was the god of perseverance, courage, determination, sticking with something and overcoming it through effort and sacrifice. So when Pluto enters that house in Aquarius, what's interesting is that it will start holding up the new ideas which we are ready to sacrifice for, which we are ready to work hard to achieve, which we're ready to put our blood, sweat, and tears into in order to reach. So Pluto starts creating powerful new visions that require sacrifice over a long period of time. As they're connecting to Uranus in the 10th, the idea now is that those long-term visions that we know we're going to have to put a lot of effort in to reach, just like someone who wants to get a gold medal in the Olympics will have to work their ass off training for a long time. That there's this kind of new sacrificial mountain we want to climb in our lives over the course of several decades, by the way, for Virgos. But it's now connecting with that revolutionary impulse in the career house. And the two are working together to impact change, which is nice because sometimes sixth house stuff, unless it's connected to 10th house stuff, will not translate quickly or immediately from sacrifice and effort into recognition and achievement. But when the two are connecting like this, sacrifice, effort on behalf of new ideals will lead to this rapid revolution of circumstance in the career. That's what we're looking at for Virgos for the most part. So now I am going to take a card out here. Let's see what we've got for our Virgos. Yeah, I love this. This is a great card. So here we go. Let me just, where are you? Here we go. So the card I drew for Virgos is the 10 of Wands. And you'll notice this card has this kind of like epic, like, oh, it looks like he's groaning and pushing to that little town in the distance. And he's just so much effort and exhaust. Look at how much he's carrying and look at how hard he's having to work to finish. So people will often associate this card with the hard work, perseverance, endurance that comes with trying to finish something or trying to complete something. Trying to create change with the Pluto-Uranus dynamic from the 6th to the 10th here is a titanic effort. There's a lot of work, a lot of pushing, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, as I said earlier. You have to ask yourself, always with the 10, is it worth it? You know, is this much work worth it? For some people, they'll say, no, it's not. I'm becoming a martyr for something I don't really care about. And for Virgos, there may be some things you go through where you have to realize that the burden and the work and the sacrifice isn't worth it. And so the Pluto-Uranus connection can be about revising what is worth it, what is worth pushing and working on behalf of versus what isn't. On the other hand, it can be about doubling down and saying nothing good is going to happen without at least sometimes running into the 10 of Wands, where you have to push like hell to get through something. You know, it's like, I think it was Winston Churchill that said, you know, if you're in hell, just keep moving or something like that. The 10 of Wands can come up either by telling you that your aspirations are sort of futile and you're pushing at things that really aren't worth the effort, or it can come up as a way of saying, keep going, cross the finish line. You're almost there. It's hard work, but it's worth it. And it can come up in either way. I've seen it come up in different contexts for different people. So looking at this, we see that sense of titanic effort that's coming on behalf of some kind of revolution you're trying to enact in your life, likely around your long-term aspirations, you know, professionally and sort of publicly. All right. So on that note, we have completed the first half of our horoscopes. And so what I'm going to do now is pause. We're going to take a look at the Kickstarter, and I'm going to do just a brief promotion for it again, and then we'll keep going. Oh gosh, yeah, we've jumped up a bit. This is great. So we're trying to get to 1,777 backers by tomorrow night. Right now, as of the time that I'm speaking, we have, let's see, 1,447. Oops. Let's see, 1,447. Let me put that up. So we've got that much. And we'll just do a little calculating here. So that means we have 330 left to go. That's pretty good. We've gotten about 20 backers since the start of this program. We still need 330 more backers to go. If you enjoy this content, if the channel means something to you on the regular, if you receive something good from it, and you haven't donated yet, we sure would love your support. You can find the link by going over to our website, nightlightastrology.com, and follow the 2024 Kickstarter link. It will take you over there. And when you go, you guys know you can pick up all sorts of different rewards and pledges, which I went through at the beginning of the program. But we certainly appreciate it. We have just, let's see, 46 hours left to go in the Kickstarter. We still need a good chunk of backers, 330 left in 2 days. That's a huge push, but I think we can do it. We're so close now to reaching that goal. I feel like we're going to get there. But today is huge. It's very critical because if we get to tomorrow and we still have 330 left, there's almost certainly no way we're going to hit that mark. I think if we clear another 100 or so today, 150 today, then I think we'll get there. But we do need support left here at the finish line to try and get to our goal. So much appreciated to everyone who's already donated. Thank you so much. I'm going to see Just look at the comments section, see how things are going. Thank you, Jen. Much, much appreciated. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to quick grab. I'm going to see, maybe I can see if Ashley will bring me something to drink, and then I will be back and I will start in on the next 6 signs. Give me just a second. Okay, I am back. Just got myself a little bit of water here. So we're going to continue now. We left off after Virgo, so we're going to head into the Libra horoscope next. All right, we'll push it forward to Libra rising. And here we see Pluto's entrance into the 5th, Uranus's entrance into the 9th. Remember, they're configured together for 2025, really all the way to 29. So this is a process that's starting to form in 2024. Remember, for all signs, as the 2 planets get to within 2 degrees of their trine in the late degrees of Earth signs, and then in 25 move into the air. Excuse me. So all right, here we go. Truly love this channel. I'm a student of Nightlife, the dance club, once again. I'm just teasing. And it's been so amazing being a part of this group. We'll be signing up for year 2. Awesome. Great. That is fantastic. Mystical Yoga says Roots and Spheres is amazing. I highly recommend. Thank you. Okay, so we have the configuration between the 9th and the 5th for Libras. First of all, Uranus entering the 9th is not so different from Pluto entering the 9th that we talked about earlier when I believe we had Gemini rising. The idea with Uranus entering the 9th house is that you are ready for a radical remaking of the intellectual and spiritual, moral or political paradigms that guide your life. That will often coincide with new teachers, new subjects, new learning experiences, maybe even being taken abroad somehow, and introducing sort of paradigm-shattering revolutions. Wonderful transit for learning things like astrology, yoga, psychedelics, entheogens, becoming interested in things that are really outside the box compared to what you're used to. So there's a kind of intellectual and spiritual revolution indicated by Uranus in the 9th house. Your ideas are changing. Now, the air signs, that will also connect you to new people, new ideas, new paradigms, new beliefs, new understanding that's coming into your life. Now, Pluto in the 5th house has a different agenda. The 5th was called the joy of Venus. And I always like to cite what Indian astrologers say about this house, or at least one that I know very well. It is the joy derived from one's dharma. Why do we say that? Because the 5th is in a trine with the 1st, and the 1st was called dharma. The trine to the 1st suggests harmonious connection in the house of joy and pleasure with the house of dharma and identity. If we are living in our creative essence, which I think we're always trying to discover at new and deeper levels, but if we're in touch with something of our essence as a person, I'm being myself, we say it like that, then the natural overflow is a feeling of creative alignment, some degree of happiness and creative fulfillment in our lives. We feel that we're inhabiting ourselves to the extent that there's a kind of creative overflow that doesn't happen every second of every day, but it's a feeling of well-being, that I'm being myself, and there's something satisfying and rewarding and then that it connects me creatively to the world around me. There's a romantic quality to the 5th house, the joy of Venus, the house of good fortune. So when Pluto enters this house for Libras, it's really suggesting deep paradigmatic changes around creative fulfillment and identity. Who are you, and is it bringing you happiness? Do you feel pleasure, creative satisfaction? Do you feel a kind of romantic connection to life itself? And as that question is being asked, or as changes are being enacted by Pluto in the 5th, they're connected to the paradigm changes, the changes of understanding, intellect, spirituality, implied by Uranus in the 9th. For a lot of people, this will mean that the paradigm has to change so that you can feel more creatively satisfied with the life you're living, more in touch with your essence. So for Libras, I look at this and I say, wow, the potential to change your mind and to inhabit more pleasure in your life, more creative satisfaction, is really profound. You could also see creative revolution and intellectual revolution as a pairing, just generally speaking. So I like this a lot, because if there are issues around the repression or suppression of pleasure from yourself or from others, that's probably not going to hold up. If there are ideas that no longer make you happy, if you're living with perceptions of the world, yourself, the universe, that need to change, they'll change, but also so that you can feel happier, so that you can feel more creative alignment, not just making something creatively like a piece of art, but creative alignment really has to do with the feeling that you're enjoying life. It's surprising and interesting. You feel like it's showing you more about who you are. There's a sense of living the life you're supposed to be living. And for most of us, we always think, well, that'll happen when I have the marriage. That'll happen when I have the career or whatever. But the 5th and the 9th will actually say, it happens when you have some of the better ideas by means of which to orient your life. Then you'll feel creative flow. You'll feel this just kind of a natural sense of well-being, but it requires a rethinking of things. All right. Let's see what card we have here. Interesting. This is an interesting card. Okay, let me just see. Yeah, I like this one a lot. So this is the 4 of Wands that I drew for Libras. What you notice right away is this could be like a marriage or kind of like a banquet, a celebration, and maybe the indication of people who've just been married, or some like initial stage of celebration, or having set the foundation for future success with an initial victory. This is a really nice auspicious card that suggests more happiness, whenever I see this card, I just think, yeah, there's something here to celebrate. There's something here to be happy about. This card has a feeling of romantic fulfillment, and it has the feeling of something being celebrated, or something that you're satisfied with, something that makes you happy. And it may also be about establishing something that can support long-term goals, projects, or visions. The 4 is very foundational. 4s in general are often about setting the foundations for something in the future. This is a happy foundation that's being set. So I like this because it kind of supports the idea that your happiness and your joy, creative fulfillment, and the shifting of ideas and beliefs and intellectual or spiritual structures in your life to support long-term happiness and satisfaction, to set a base for future success. Are you happy? So I like that one a lot. Libras, by the way, I mean, this is just having worked with a lot of Libras, having some Libra planets in my own chart, 3 Libra planets in my own chart. Sometimes we think, my happiness is not really allowed unless it's somehow appropriate, or it looks, my life has to look a certain way. And as long as it's judged as valid and beautiful in an external sense, once it is, then I know I'll really be able to take it in and enjoy it. And a lot of the times the biggest revolution for Libras is flipping it and saying, once I feel the joy, that creates the external look of symmetry, harmony, balance, beauty, that can be a real revolution for Librans. And I think that might be one of the kinds of things implied by this. Okay, let's go on. So we're going to Scorpio now. Scorpio has Pluto entering the 4th with Uranus entering the 8th. This is interesting because this speaks really deeply to familial karma. When Pluto enters the 4th house, the planet of death and rebirth is entering the underworld and the roots and foundation of the chart, which is for all of us associated with home, family, living environment. But it is also associated with specific people like our parents. Land and living environment can mean the purchase or sale of property. It can also mean moving or relocating. When Pluto enters the 4th house, you're thinking about this upheaval and gradual surging upwards, or sort of eruption of unconscious material relative to your home, your family, your ancestral past. But the 4th house was also connected with the mystery schools, and initiations into the sacred or secret cults or mysteries in the ancient world. So Pluto in the 4th will often put you in touch with deep, the deep hidden foundations of your life. On one level, that's ancestral karma, that's familial karma, that's your family history, your family of origin, and the karma that's been handed to you that you now are ready to transform in some way. That can mean having a family, that can mean divorce, that can mean marriage, that can mean births and deaths in the family. It's such a rich tapestry of topics in the 4th house that have to do with the psychic foundations of life itself. Then there's also the encounter with mysteries, with ideas and thoughts that help us penetrate to the roots of our existence, which can mean occult studies. So the 8th house was not associated with occult studies traditionally, the 4th was. So you have this kind of Plutonian depth of insight. You could very easily get interested in things like Hermeticism, alchemy, depth psychology. With Pluto entering the 4th house, some Scorpios are going to undertake profound intellectual transformation as they dive very deeply into subject matters that have to do with why we're here and who we are and stuff like that. On the other hand, again, the theme of death and rebirth around the roots, around home and family, parents, what it means to have your own family, or what kind of baggage you carry from your past, the opportunity to transform that karma is implied by Pluto in the 4th. However, there's also this very interesting trine to Uranus in the 8th, which suggests, among other things, radical disruption. Uranus in general, radical disruption, right? Of the soul contracts that you have. Remember earlier we were talking about the 8th house, and we said that one of the things that the 8th does is it brings in things that people owe us, that the universe owes us. or as a matter of karma, or that we owe other people debts. Now, that debt could be something we gladly pay: love, care, tenderness, devotion, charity, generosity. There's no reason that we can't gladly sort of pay our debts and do so with love and compassion, and a sense of actually taking joy in being able to give things to other people that are sort of owed, that we know we ought to give. But there's also a tremendous power in receiving things from other people. And all of that can be very beneficial in the 8th house. However, there is also those things that we have to pay that are heavier to pay, heavier prices we have to pay. There's heavier soul contracts that we get engaged with that are more burdensome. Think about the most difficult relationships you've ever had, right? Those soul contracts are not easy. And so Uranus entering the 8th, though, wants to radically reconfigure the contracts that we have that involve a kind of reciprocity. You owe something to me, I owe something to you. How are those things configured? Uranus is going to break the mold around soul contracts, which means it can introduce exciting new possibilities for give and take in exchange. It can liberate us from debts. It can liberate us from unhealthy entanglements, but it can also introduce exciting new paradigm shifting relationships that involve a give and take, that are part of this deeper reworking of our roots that Pluto in the 4th house implies. When you're trying to rebuild your life, or when you're trying to reconstitute what your base of operations is psychically, it helps to have amazing, new, interesting relationships that support or that involve you in exchanges that can help support the development of a new base. For example, when you move, you enter into a new community, and there's new possibilities for collaboration or relationships with other people that can help you develop a new base of support in a new city, right? That's very 4th, 8th house. On the other hand, the extent to which you have soul contracts that come from family, that are informed by family patterns, ghosts of the past, that have you entering into the same old kinds of relationships that reflect the same old kind of unhealthy dynamics that you haven't yet healed or looked at closely enough, this will be an exchange between the two that will help you liberate and get out of relationships that reflect something of the like rot at the roots. So if you need to get out of relationships, out of certain kinds of patterns in relationships of give and take that aren't balanced or equal, or they're like, devil's bargains that aren't good to be in, this transit can help you remove yourself from those. But again, the other exciting possibility is to introduce you to new bonds that can help you rework things at the roots. Excuse me. All right, Scorpios, let's draw a card. Well, just a second. Here we go. You know what? Let's do this. Another shuffle or two. That's interesting. Yeah, this card totally fits. Okay, let me show you guys. Card I drew for Scorpios is the 5 of Swords. You can see in this picture that someone is, maybe they've won something, but they've won it in a way that looks kind of like unfair, like they're gloating, and there's these people sort of walking away like, yeah, you won and you got the swords, but the other people are walking away look like, maybe there's like gloating in the face of a sort of meaningless victory. It's sort of like if I were to get really stoked about whooping my kids at basketball. you know what I mean? This can also be about sometimes I look at it in terms of the people walking away from the character holding the swords. Like, someone who's taken a lot from you, right? And they feel proud, or is it worth continuing to associate with this person? That's a good question for this card. It's also like, what does it mean to win in a good way versus maybe an unhealthy or vain kind of winning? And I also look at this as kind of like hollow victories. Hollow victories. That's interesting because when I think about the trine between Pluto in the 4th and Uranus in the 8th for Scorpios, I think about the potential to liberate yourself from unhealthy relationships, right? And that could be very relieving. I guess the message in that card might be careful that the way in which you disentangle yourself from others or reach some moment of liberation isn't sort of spiteful or isn't isn't inflating your ego in some way, because this combination can be very powerful when it comes to getting us out of unhealthy relationships. Like I am no longer indebted to you, like or getting something from other people, like taking something from them and receiving it and being like, yeah, I'm due, I'm owed. So I'd be careful of those mentalities of like not getting into, I don't know, like domineering, competitive, games with people where you're thinking about like, I've taken something from them or they've taken something from me and I'm going to get them back. Or yeah, just be careful of like petty dealings. That's what I would say for that card. All right. Let's move on now to Sagittarius rising. Got Pluto entering the 3rd and Uranus in the 7th. So obviously for Sagittarians, sort of the biggest news is that Uranus is entering your 7th house. And that's going to be about the revolution in relationships. So Uranus, above all, values freedom and originality and likes to experience things that are different as opposed to sticking with the same old, same old. When Uranus enters the 7th house for most people, if you're in a relationship, it doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship will end because I just need freedom now. Sometimes that happens. But a lot of the times, it points to the need for awakening, revolution, liberation, and creative change within existing relationships. Sometimes for Uranus in the 7th, that could mean for one person that they're opening their relationship. For another person, it could be that they're rekindling their sex life. For another person, it could be that there's just a creative energy that's reconnecting you, by opening up new ways of relating to a spouse or partner. For some people, it could have you dating for the first time in a while, and maybe dating lots of different people that you wouldn't have normally seen yourself dating. And for other people, it might mean that you don't want to be with anyone, that there's an impulse of creativity and originality that's so strong that it's keeping you away from commitment. The need to experiment and have fun and break the mold relationally is what is implied most generally, though, by Uranus in the 7th. That's a 7-year process that's going to do a lot of different things for Sagittarians. When you pair that with Pluto entering the 3rd, remember we talked earlier about the 3rd house called Dia, goddess, and a place of, it's like the fish tank that we're living in. It's our environment, the ecosystem, both physically, emotionally, mentally, and culturally. And there's people in that fish tank and places and things, and our own mind, mood, and emotions are in that place, as well as the kind of neighborhood and the cultures we inhabit. Pluto is introducing tremendous cultural and environmental change in the lives of Sagittarians. There's going to be very different things, thoughts, people, ideas that are reworking and dismantling and recreating the fish tank that you're living in. While that's happening, it's happening as this profound impulse toward revolution, freedom, creative emancipation is happening in the marriage house, in the house of intimate relationships. So intimate relationships and cultural change and a reworking of the kind of culture of your life. That's what's implied for Sagittarians. It's a very powerful combination. Let's take a look at a card that comes up for Sagittarians. Sometimes this will also mean that there's new ideas and new thoughts and new learning that's coming in, because that's how part of how kind of everyday ecology of our life can change is, the ideas change and it changes the fish tank. The people change. It changes the fish tank. The cultures change, and so forth. And that also will tie in very closely to this kind of revolutionary impulse in intimate relationships. All right, let's. Oh, that's an interesting combination. Just take a look at this for a second and think about it. Okay. I think I've got it. So the card, I got one card and then I pulled another one to get a little bit more understanding. So the first card I pulled is the Four of Pentacles. You can see this guy, he's kind of sitting on a throne. He's got a city in the background. Looks like he's a four. So he's got a base of support and wealth. And he's sort of established in the world, in the earthy world of the Pentacles. He's got like some clout. He's got some resources. He's got something of a stable base of operations, but he's also clutching to that coin. And then the juxtaposing card I pulled is the Hermit. The Hermit has us like the album cover of Led Zeppelin 4, I think it was, right? Or whatever Led Zeppelin cover it was. The Hermit has us moving away from the world, certainly moving away from the world the Four of Pentacles figure inhabits. This guy's not in the city. He's up on top of the mountain. He's got a lantern. This is a mystic. This is a recluse. This is someone who very Saturnian in the sense that he doesn't care if he's involved in the world. He can be very much apart from it, distant from the world. That is the classic Saturnian figure. And of course, there's a bit of Jupiter in the Hermit too, insofar as the Hermit is usually embodies a kind of wisdom and understanding, but also a distance and a remoteness, a solitude that's implied. What I love about this is that when you think about what's going on for Sagittarians in the 3rd and 7th houses, Pluto in Aquarius, a Saturn-ruled sign, and Uranus in Gemini might have you detaching from certain worldly places or people. It might have you considering more vast spaces and asking you to step away from various worldly attachments, maybe through different kinds of people, different relationships, different thought structures. Maybe you are reworking your environment and just maybe I don't think that means you have to totally get, no job. You're going to go off the grid and live in the country. But the Four of Pentacles represents whatever ways in which you're very attached to the world. These very airy planets in Uranus and Pluto might be asking you to step away from the world a little bit more to achieve some kind of space for greater reflection or some greater reflection or distance that's needed. And that might actually help you. Maybe it helps you loosen your grip on certain things that you tend to get too worried about that are so tethered to the world. I like that as a shift, not only in relationships, but a shift in mind. A shift in mind that can give you a little bit of space from worldly clutching. Remember, you have Virgo in your 10th, which is the place that engages you with the world, especially through careers. An earthy sign, with Capricorn in your 2nd and Taurus in your 6th. Very earthy spaces for Sagittarians that connect to the work houses, for example. So it could be that there's some need that this kind of airy configuration between Uranus and Pluto will help give you some kind of meaningful distance. All right. All right, let's move on to Capricorn. So with Capricorn, we have Pluto in the 2nd and Uranus in the 6th. Now, Pluto in the 2nd for Capricorns is going to start reworking the resources in your life. Time, money, and energy being the main currents that we have in the 2nd, that depending on how we use them, they will support and prop up our existence. Work, get money, pay bills, have a roof over your head, get food, get clothing. That's all very basic 2nd house stuff. But also the development of various skills and resources that can prop us up emotionally and spiritually. Learning astrology, for example, learning yoga, doing physical exercise, learning how to diet or eat the right kind of food. Anything that we learn or develop as a skill that can help us to be happier, healthier, and supported in our vitality, our health, and our existence come through the 2nd house. So this reworking, this death and rebirth of how we take care of ourselves, of what we have or are in possession of, what we want to develop and cultivate within ourselves, as well as the actual transformation of things like business or money or finances. This is all implied by Pluto in the second. When Uranus enters the sixth, remember we talked earlier of the sixth house as a place that it involves, especially with Uranus or Pluto in that house, you're talking about the ideals which we will suffer for, which we will work for. I mean, whether you want to be an astrologer, a basketball player, a doctor, a nurse, a social worker, a counselor, you're going to have to put some serious work in. There's hours you need to get certified as a therapist. There's hours of reading you need to do and tons of charts you need to look at if you want to be an astrologer. There's thousands of hours playing a sport if you want to be an athlete. The sixth house is directly correlated to those things that we will have to pour effort into: blood, sweat, and tears. Uranus entering the sixth starts to disturb, disrupt, and innovate when it comes to the currently held ideals that we are sacrificing for and those new ones that we want to start sacrificing for. So on that level, you see both a reworking of resources, of time, energy, skills, money, in relationship to a kind of a revolution of our sacrificial principles and ideals. I'm going to start reworking money as I start working and sacrificing on behalf of new ideas and images. So very common when you see this kind of connection for people to be, for example, developing new skills with the idea that it might yield better, a better salary. It's very common when you see this combination for people to be reworking their resources so that they can feel free from various health afflictions. If I learn how to take better care of, my diet, my sleep, exercise, I'm going to feel liberated when it comes to those nagging chronic issues that I've had with my digestion. It can be that simple. But whatever it is, it's like I'm seeking greater freedom and I'm seeking a new relationship with resources. And there are going to be new ideas that I'm willing to work on behalf of that I think will grant me greater freedom, greater mobility of resources, or more things at my disposal that I feel like can help me or support me. So that's the basic idea with Capricorns in this combination. Let's take a card. For example, I could see Capricorns getting into a new health program with this. I could see Capricorns working through a new training program that might give them a better job or better salary. Either way, sacrifice, effort, work on behalf of the need for different resources. That's what I see as, and it'll be something very different that you feel is now worth putting your time and energy into. And then it'll take place over 4 or 5 years that you'll really feel it coming forth. All right. Yes, the perfect card for this. All right, so the card that I drew for Capricorns is the Knight of Pentacles. When Knight cards come in, they usually mean like vigorous energy, right? And the Knight of Pentacles is maybe, it's not as vigorous as like the Knight of Swords or the Knight of Wands, which are fire and air. They're a little bit more, I don't know. I feel like they're on cocaine a little. The Knight of Pentacles is a little steadier, which is nice. But anyway, it's still a vigorous energy, a forward-looking, entrepreneurial, risk-taking, crusading kind of knight. But he's doing so for the sake of material things, earthy things, transformation of body, of health, of money, of resources, of tangible earthy things that can help you, again, with your existence. Like the second house is about what do I have that can help support me in my physical body in this lifetime. And so the Knight of Pentacles suggests a kind of surge of a crusading, earthly, maybe even entrepreneurial kind of impulse, developing something new that can be of practical, tangible benefit, and doing so with a kind of excitement that only the Knights have. So I love that for Capricorns. I think it's a wonderful card to pull, actually. It is a little slower and steadier. Diana, I see you mentioning Knight of Pentacles, slow and steady. Yeah, it's not as explosive as, like, the other knights exactly, but it's still, it's exciting, and it has that kind of cardinality that knights have to it. Even though Pluto's in a fixed sign, Uranus is obviously energizing it quite a bit, I think. So yeah, all right. Well, let's keep going. We're going to move on to Aquarius. All right, so Aquarius rising, we connect Pluto with Uranus from first to fifth. Now, Pluto in the first house is classic, right? We're talking about a birthing energy. Coming out of your 12th house, by the way, like, congratulations. It's like, what a long, strange trip it's been. The Pluto coming into the first house is literally like something from the underworld coming into conscious awareness, and then inviting profound change. Most readily, Pluto in the first house is inceptional, so it can mean anything that's ready to be born, and it's born as a matter of new ideas in Aquarius, big thought paradigms changing and requiring the launching of something new. That's a first house theme in general, just like the seventh is associated with death or disappearance or endings. So you have this kind of quality of Pluto saying new now, especially with new paradigmatic ideas that want to take shape quickly. That can happen as Pluto is moving through the first house over a course of years, 5 years, but still very powerful new things seeking kind of an inceptional birthing energy. Now, on the other hand, the first house is the place of your identity, psychologically, as well as your health, your vitality, your physical appearance. When Pluto goes through the first house, it is going to be requiring that you let go of aspects of your identity that aren't working anymore, that aren't you anymore, and that you consider new ideas and a new self. That will, for most Aquarians, that will mean that you are connected socially. But, the strange thing about Aquarians, for as social as they are, living by ideas about humanity, about what it means to be human, about collective, political, historical things, Aquarians are often quite interested in larger paradigms that connect self to collective. However, Aquarians, strangely, are some of the most powerful individualists of the zodiac. It's kind of remember, the hidden opposite is Leo. Leo's hidden opposite is Aquarius. There's a way that Aquarians need to, in order to really be happy, need to embrace the power of individuality. And so there's this way in which Aquarians can feel so alone in a crowd, even though there's a way in which you love the crowd, you love people, but also you can feel very alone. I see this because Uranus is connecting in a trine from the fifth house, which is that place we talked about earlier as a place of joy derived from being oneself, creative satisfaction. The revolution here that I see is about feeling happier with who you are as an individual, even if there's aspects of your individuality that connect you through your most exciting ideals to other people, to humanity as a whole. There's still a call here in this alignment to feel like you are finding something that is more authentic to yourself as an individual apart from all other people. Paradoxically, there may be something of that creative, personal, like, individuation process that connects you to other people or groups, as they say with Aquarius. But it's still here, the drumbeat is individual creative self-expression, a sense of personally individuating and evolving in your sense of selfhood, identity, even appearance and health. You get to rework yourself and figure out what it means to be more authentically you, that is not ever fully defined by where you are placed collectively or socially. That's a powerful process for Aquarians, connected intimately to Uranus in the fifth house, who is demanding creative renaissance, greater creative freedom and innovation. Let's draw a card. Yeah, I love this one. This is neat. So the card that I drew for Aquarians is the Three of Pentacles. So here you'll see, like, this card is often associated with collaborative efforts, but there's a kind of creative endeavor that's happening here. There's like a creative design, but it's a creative design that's reflective of a larger institution. Like maybe this is on the inside of a cathedral or a church or something like that. You can see like a friar, and it's like they're mapping something out, they're planning something, they're working together, but you still have a creative, like, artist there. So I like this card because it suggests a kind of utterly creative artistry that needs to come forth from you. And yet it suggests that there may be elements of social collaboration at work at the exact same time. And that's always the balance that the air signs are trying to strike, especially Aquarius. How do I discover the utterly unique creative side of myself while recognizing that I enjoy being connected to collectives or people or humanity at large, or projects that are about the larger, mission of some group. So that tension between the creative artist and the needs or plans of a group or an institution or something like that, just that archetypal tension, that's what I'm seeing reflected here in the Three of Pentacles for Aquarians to consider right now. All right, we're going to move on to our final sign, which is Pisces, always. Pisces, they wait till the very end. Oh God, here we go. So Uranus entering the 4th, connecting in trine to Pluto in the 12th. What is that all about? Uranus in the 4th obviously brings revolution to the roots. When Uranus comes into the 4th house, it's like that family karma, that constellation of family karmas that come from all the different people in your family, the ancestors, even people who are dead already, is going to be shaken up. It's like a metaphorical earthquake is coming into the 4th house, and it's going to shake up the foundations. That can mean interesting marriages, children being born, grandparents passing away. Just imagine, what does it look like when, like, the French Revolution, without all the blood and literal gore of it or whatever, what does it look like when a major revolutionary historical moment enters the personal space of my home and family? You could move, you could relocate, there can be significant changes in family dynamics. You can feel emancipated and liberated from stuff that's in your family past that's been heavy or dark. And that's also implied by the trine to Pluto in Aquarius in the 12th house, that you can start dissociating in a positive way. I know we use the word dissociation mostly in a negative way, but you can start disentangling, maybe you could use, or dissociating from ideas, thoughts, patterns, behaviors, modes of communication that come from your ancestral past that are really not healthy for you. And you kind of say, oh, I'm getting this broad picture of these unconscious dynamics, Pluto in the 12th, that have some association with my family of origin and the way that what that environment looked like for me growing up, mentally, emotionally, and so forth. The mental emotional cross for Pisces is important because you're water signs. Emotional intelligence is really strong for you. Then, Uranus in the 4th, you're thinking about the fact that your roots include the kind of juxtaposition between your emotional nature and something of the mental environment that you were in. So Uranus in the 4th house, again, just broadly speaking, creates a freedom. It disrupts patterns around home, family, living environment, ancestry, roots. Uranus in the 4th will also probably have you taking an interest in things that are hidden or unseen with a kind of scientific curiosity, investigative journalism, exploring, Hermetic philosophy with a kind of, like Uranus in the 4th is actually good for studying something like astrology. In Gemini in particular, a Mercury ruled sign. Remember, Mercury was said to be the ancient founder of astrology. It was the Hermetic tradition. So anyway, the potential for mental, intellectual revolution, investigation into hidden topics, and revolution around home, family, roots, ancestry, that's all implied by Uranus in the 4th. reshaping the structure of your foundation too, maybe in terms of where you live or what your home environment looks like or something. Now, when Pluto in the 12th is happening at the same time, it could be that the changes around home and family are happening as you have to sort of reconfigure yourself in much broader social contexts. For example, I could see someone who marries into a family, like maybe you marry someone of a different race, a different ethnicity or religious background. And the reconfiguration has to do with looking at the unconscious dynamics of the social scene that you were raised in, as opposed to where a spouse was raised or how they were raised or whatever. It could be about relationships that make you much more acutely aware of socioeconomic differences between how you were raised and how someone else was raised. So the revolution at the roots can help you become aware of unconscious attitudes or like blind spots that you have about other modes of social existence, like other people and other places and how other people live. And now you're starting to understand or see differences culturally and socially. That's one really promising potential for Pisceans, which actually make you a lot wiser and diversify the way you're able to connect with other people with greater empathy and understanding. It's also maybe about getting some healthy, detached, intellectual, or rational distance, because Pisceans so empathetic, so easily identified with what other people are feeling, what other people are needing, what other people are experiencing. Maybe the most powerful revolution would be the revolution of gaining some means by which to detach and say, to create some boundaries because you're able to have a little bit more objectivity. That would be a great promise of this combination. I think the other thing to look at here is sometimes, for Pisceans, the hardest thing to do is to recognize the very subtle level at which ideas, thoughts, and beliefs are shaping the social world that you inhabit. Because when you're a double-bodied water sign rising, it's easy to think that you're working through the world according to a very felt and instinctual sense of people and environments. And you are to a large extent. But 12th house Aquarius for Pisceans implies that you may be unconscious on some level of the degree to which paradigms of thought, ideologies, and beliefs are actually influencing your choices, even though you think that you're more consistently coming from the emotional body or the heart, which again, it's not that you aren't, but Pluto in the 12th in Aquarius could suggest that there are unconscious ideological biases that you need to get in touch with. And they may also stem from your family of origin or your past. Those are all interesting possibilities for Pisceans. But broadly speaking, I like the idea of a revolution at the roots that is also about kind of unearthing unconscious material from especially the family past. All right. Let's draw one card here. Yes, I like this a lot. This is a perfect card to close with. So for Pisces, the card that comes up is the Eight of Cups. And you'll see this card as a figure who's kind of walking up a path and leaving behind 8 cups that sit under the moon. Whenever I see this card, I always think some things, in order to go on, you have to let go. At some point, there will be a temptation to stick with what you know, what's worked, and what you already have. But there will be probably a sense of restlessness, like there's something more, there's something different, and you need to move on. This card has to let go of a great accumulated sort of wealth, something that's very familiar, something that, but you keep going. And it's a kind of bittersweet card of leaving some things behind because there are even more promising things to come. When I think of this, the cups, the water, the emotionality, it's like you have to make a rational choice, kind of a critical moment to not let the emotional attachments prevent you from moving forward into a different future. And the unconscious fears of like, well, if I leave this behind, I'll lose everything. Well, the Uranus at the roots, Pluto in the 12th, it suggests, leaving some things behind in order to go to even brighter things in the future. You know, trust that. I mean, you don't want to be reckless, you know, but like this card to me always suggests that it's nice. There may be more. Something to consider for Pisceans. All right. Well, and Saturn in the first in Pisces, someone is mentioning as well, right? Like, yeah, there's a heaviness there with Saturn in your first house right now. And really kind of in the next year or two, as this transition of Uranus into Gemini happens and the trine between Pluto and Uranus happens, Saturn will be leaving your first house. And there's always like weighty, consequential things that we learn and realize, and we have to let go of, you know, in order. It's like Saturn has a lot of no's, but the no's are shaping a more distinct and perfect yes. And that's what I think that card is about as well. So just keep that in mind. All right. Well, we have finished with our, we finished with all 12 signs. That was great. Let's see where our backers are at. Awesome. We are doing pretty well. We have, remember, our goal is to reach 1,777 backers by tomorrow night. Right now we have, oh, you know what? I need to adjust this. Let's see. We have, we're making good progress, guys. We're at 1,460 backers right now. I'm going to do, which means we just need 317 more backers by tomorrow night. Can we get there? I think we can. I really do. I'm like, I was kind of sweating it out like a couple days ago. I was like, oh God, I don't know. But we're really close now. 317 by tomorrow night is doable. I think we can get there. We need one last big surge of support. If you enjoy this channel, please consider donating. You can find the link to the Kickstarter by going over to our website, nightlightastrology.com, clicking on the 2024 Kickstarter link. Pick up a class pass, come study with us. Any of our other rewards, offerings, readings that we offer. My book is there for sale. You get advanced release of the book chapter by chapter as it comes out. So there's a lot of good things that we try to offer as a way of saying thank you for your support. I've been here, you know, kind of hustling and trying to promote the Kickstarter the last minute. Tomorrow, I will be on for one last live stream to close out the Kickstarter. It will be 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. I guess that's 8 a.m. Pacific. And tomorrow, I'm going to be looking at horoscopes for all 12 signs. We're going to be investigating Mars's retrograde in the sign of Cancer, which happens it starts its retrograde in December of 2024, but really January, February, March, April is the long period of time that Mars spends its retrograde in Cancer in 2025, followed by Jupiter's entrance into Cancer right afterward. So we're going to talk about the challenges of Mars in Cancer retrograde that all 12 signs will face, followed by the kind of amazing rebirth and promise of Jupiter entering its exaltation in that sign. You couldn't have more extreme things happening, right? Like Mars in its fall in Cancer retrograde, followed by Jupiter entering Cancer and sort of lifting everything back up. What does that mean? We're going to take a look at those archetypal signatures tomorrow and look at the horoscopes for all 12 signs as a way of trying to push across the finish line before New Year's Eve. I want to just take a minute to see what you guys are saying in the comments section before we leave. Let's see. Yes. 2.5 hours. Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely ready to, I'm going to go to the gym and work out and take care of my body. That's what comes next for me now. And then I'm done for the day. Play guitar for us. No, I'm a little too shy for that. Once in a while I pop something on Instagram, but that's about it. Yeah. So I'm making sure I didn't miss any like major questions about the Kickstarter or anything like that. Hope you guys enjoyed today. This was really fun. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I think we'll end there. You guys, thank you so much for supporting Nightlight and the Kickstarter. Really appreciate it. We'll see you again tomorrow and hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take it easy, everyone.